All right, man, peace. So, brothers, this is going to be the continuation of a series that I've started in the past called Train Up Thy Child. And it's going to be featuring a young female by the name of Trisha Paul, whose young son, very unfortunately for him, was introduced to the real world at the age of 11 years old when he was subjected to a quote-unquote racial or really racist diatribe by the quote-unquote headmaster or principal at his Catholic school, or as I prefer to call him, the headmaster. Supposedly, Miss Trisha Paul's son had an issue in his classroom retaining one of his lessons or a problem with his homework, and he was sent to the quote-unquote headmaster, i.e. headmaster, for discipline. And the headmaster decided that he was going to take it back to slavery times and tell the young boy that he had to get down on both knees to apologize to his teacher, because supposedly that was the custom in various African cultures that he had been subjected to and taught, talking about the headmaster. He alleged to be informed on the customs of supplication or subservience or obedience, i.e. servitude, from certain Aboriginal cultures in the land of Ham, i.e. Africa, and he was trying to force it on the child, assuming that because the child is quote-unquote melanated, that he is African. So there are various layers to this storyline. As many of you brothers who are in the knowledge understand, there is a difference in people, and not everyone is the same just because they are quote-unquote melanated. You are of the clan or the tribal lineage according to your patrilineal line. And that is what determines what culture you adhere to, what customs you practice, what rituals you reenact, so on and so forth. But anyway, let's see what goes on here. Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jessica Moore. We begin with a Long Island mother who says her black son was forced by a white school administrator to kneel while apologizing to a teacher. And tonight, she's calling that act racist.
Please keep in mind that Long Island, which basically is a pseudo-province in the state of New York, is one of the most segregated areas in all of New York State. There are certain areas in Long Island, like Roosevelt and a couple other places, that are quote-unquote black and Hispanic oriented, but the vast majority of Long Island is almost strictly Caucasian, comprised mostly of Italians and Irish, and they prefer to keep it that way. Now, there are insurgencies of certain Hispanic people like the Guatemalans, the Nicaraguans, who normally are members of the gang MS-13, and that group or that gang does tend to oppress many of the people of color or the other people of color in Long Island, particularly the so-called black people. But there are sections in Long Island that are predominantly so-called black. Now, if I remember correctly, Eddie Murphy, Rakim, Chuck D from Public Enemy are all from Long Island. But anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
11, CBS 2's Kieran Dillon spoke with that mother.
He's hurt, humiliated, sad, disappointed. He's just going through a lot of the emotions now.
Brothers, please keep in mind, as the scriptures tell us in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6, train up thy child in the way he should go, and he shall not depart from it. What does that mean in this current day and time? We have to make sure that we're the main educators of our children, not the public school system, aka the public fool system, or the Catholic school system, aka the Catholic fool system. There are things that your child can learn from these institutions. What they maintain or retain should be directly correlated with our ability to substantiate those lessons that are taught in the school. In other words, we have to go over what our children are being taught every day and make sure that we're able to screen out the nonsense and help them understand what's going to be the most beneficial for their future when it comes to the lessons that they're being given in the school system. Because I don't care what school you're going to go to, none of these schools are adequate for the so-called young black male. They have no idea what to teach him, because for the most part we live in a world of narrative. No one truly knows or understands the complexity of the so-called black man's history, and if he's not being taught appropriate history, it is going to affect his self-image. If your self-image has been affected, your conduct is going to be affected. So all of these things start in the home. These issues that we have as a so-called community can be controverted in the home. It always starts in the home. It does not start with protesting out in the street and marching and waving around signs, pretense, and attention mongering. That is why nothing ever changes, is because the so-called black man does not want to accept responsibility for his actions and his inaction in the home. That's where it all starts, and that's where it all ends. Because if we don't police our own homes and make sure that we're the number one educator of our sons, they end up in situations like what we see here.
Trisha Paul says her 11-year-old son is traumatized after an incident at his school, St. Martin de Porres Marianis, last month. She says after her son was sent to Headmaster John Holian's office for doing the wrong assignment in class, Holian told him to get on it.
Ellen spoke with that mother.
He's hurt, humiliated, sad, disappointed. He's just going through a lot of the emotions now.
Trisha Paul says her 11-year-old son is traumatized after an incident at his school, St. Martin de Porres Marianis.
Now, brothers, look at this right here. As we can see along the left-hand portion of the front facing of this school is the false image of Christ, aka modeled after Caesar Borgia. And even before that, prior to the time of Christ, the image that we call Serapis Christus was modeled after Alexander the Great and Ptolemy. So it's always been the same false image that has been propagated to the masses in order to exalt the image of the Caucasian. On the right hand side, we see the image of the quote-unquote Virgin Mother with the boy child, actually representing Isis and Horus. The head, of course, is surrounded by the nimbus or the quote-unquote halo, showing that she is the wife of Saturn. All the Catholic Church is basically the Italian version of the Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system. One of the things that shocked the conquistadors so much when they first arrived here in the quote-unquote New World is how many of the rituals of the Aboriginal people match their own within the Catholic Church. And that's because the Aboriginals here also worshipped the quote-unquote divine triune of the ancient Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system, all the way down to the rosary beads, the sun worship, the ritualistic sacrifice, the image of the heart and the veneration of the heart within the body representing the sun of the quote-unquote cosmos or the universe, so on and so forth. The Incans even had a nunnery very similar to the Catholic Church.
Month. She says after her son was sent to Headmaster John Holian's office for...
Here goes Headmaster with his wife. You can tell they're very close.
The wrong assignment in class, Holian told him to get on his knees while apologizing to his white female teacher.
Now look at this shit. The headmaster told that little black boy, so-called black boy, to get down on both knees to apologize to his teacher, and used the excuse that he told him to do that because that's what he learned from a Nigerian cultural practice. Now he's very fortunate. I'm not quite sure if the boy's father is in the young boy's life or in her life, but had a man heard something like this person right here, the headmaster or headmaster, his life might be in danger. At the very least, he would receive a hell of a slap, no doubt about it, to the point where he might catch a heart attack and die, or try to act like he was more hurt than he was. But I promise you, if there was a so-called black man in this boy's life, for real, an authoritative figure, this guy would have got the shit slapped out of him, no doubt.
Stated that he should apologize the African or the Nigerian way, which was to kneel down.
Later, the boy told his mother, and horrified, Paul asked the headmaster about the incident. She says Holian told her he learned about the ritual from a Nigerian family whose child used to go to the school.
Maybe that's the case. Or could it also be that that was a circuitous way or a roundabout way to get the boy to get down on both knees so that you can get turned on? We know this is a Catholic school, so it would not surprise me. You know, somebody should check this guy's laptop. He might have some pedo stuff on there, or some child porn or what have you. Wouldn't shock me at all. Of course, everything I'm saying is alleged.
African father who came in and told their child to apologize the African or Nigerian way. And that's when it dawned upon me that maybe he generalized my child because he was black.
The Haitian American mom says she asked the headmaster whether the act was standard practice and was told this was the first time a student had been asked to kneel while making an apology.
My son is not African. You know, you generalize everyone because they're black. You just assume that my child is Nigerian.
Now, right here, I'm not quite sure if the mother understands this, but she is making a delineation or a distinction between the various nations of the planet Earth. And this is something that's not taught. A lot of people can sense this, but they express it in a way that's kind of clunky. Now, of course, you have the pro-blackities and the wokeities who claim to enjoy and embrace being quote-unquote African. But whenever you search them out and ask them certain questions that are probing, like what is your tribal lineage, or where do you come from in Africa? What nation are you a member of within Africa? What clan or what tribe? They never have a real answer, nothing of substance. They'll claim that they've taken a genetic or a DNA test and that they can trace their origins back to a multitude of tribes, something nonsensical like that, so that they can protect their pseudo-wokeism and their alleged cultural heritage, while also still being able to be a modern-day nigga and not being held accountable for their embracing of chaos and anarchy. The Lima mentality or culture that we have here in America. That's how our people operate, especially wokeities. Wokeities or pro-blackities, they're never really willing to go all the way in to what they claim to be is an affinity for their ancestral lineage. They talk a good game, but they're not really about anything. But once again, this person here, whether she understands it or not, she says something that was very true. Many people who are uninformed or not properly educated per se, they make the assumption that just because someone is melanated that they're all so-called black and that black equals African, and that's not the case. There are people scattered all throughout the Pacific Islands, like the people of Fiji or Vanuatu, who are just as dark and have hair just as woolly as mine or yours, and they're not Hamitic.
It was done simply because he was black.
In a meeting with the headmaster, Paul says
Here goes the headmaster with his wife again. Must be their anniversary.
Apologized and told the family his actions were simply disciplinary in nature.
Now, the name of the school is Saint Martin de Porte Marianist School. Now, the term Marianist is most likely an allusion to the quote-unquote Virgin Mary, and of course, beyond that, Aphrodite, the quote-unquote goddess of the seas, also known as Mary or Mary.
Headmaster Holian did not respond to our request for comments,
and I think that we touched on that in one of the videos that I did on Kobe Bryant. It may have been the Kobe Bryant series that associated him with the COVID-19 pandemic.
School did forward us a letter it sent to parents which says it does not condone Holian's actions, adding they are not consistent with the school's policies. Meanwhile, the headmaster is now on a leave of absence while the school investigates the incident.
I'm sure that that's not the only incident that's investigation worthy involving this clown. He looks to be at least 60 plus years old. This is not the first time that he has infracted upon the humanity of a quote-unquote child of color. I promise you that. Beyond that, check this man's laptop. I promise you're going to find some off-center stuff on there. There's not going to be no prayer readings and liturgies on his damn laptop.
Says, well, leave is a step in the right direction. She wants Holian to step down, for staff to receive racially sensitive training, and for child disciplinary measures to be laid out in the school's code of conduct.
Good for her if she's truly that comprehensive. She's handling it wonderfully and very professionally. She's handling it far better than the average father most likely would have handled it. And sometimes that's where the woman makes a great emissary, a great ambassador for situations like this, because a man most likely would have choked that guy up and, who knows, maybe caught a serious charge. At the very least, slapped the shit out of him. I mean, come on. You have a man telling your son to get down on both knees and bow down to a fucking white teacher? You must be out of your motherfucking mind.
Need to make sure that there isn't anyone else being mistreated based on the color of their skin, their race.
Paul says her son remains confused by what happened.
Of course he was, because that was his first introduction to the real world. So, welcome to captivity, young man.
She's pulled him out of in-person learning. In Uniondale, Long Island, Kieran Dillon, CBS 2 News.
Yes, Uniondale, that's another region in Long Island where there are a lot of so-called black people. But once again, welcome to captivity, so-called young man. Hopefully he's going to be informed and educated enough in reality to be able to navigate this society. So many woke so-called black parents that do a very poor job of helping their child understand how to navigate this society without putting them in constant fear, giving them the quote-unquote talk about driving by themselves and things of that sort. Many of those things are necessary evils, but I think that our people do too much fear pumping and fear mongering into the minds of children, as opposed to edifying them on some of the things that they're really going to have to understand as to what they're going to encounter if they go to schools and environments that are quote-unquote multiracial, what people naturally assume about so-called black children, so-called black people, particularly so-called black boys. There are many things that you're going to have to deal with in regards to assumptions. But anyway, once again, brothers, we have to train up our children in the way that they should go. Peace.